Welcome to As The Pokéball Turns, where every trainer has a story. I'm David Hernandez, and I'm joined by Adam Woodward, organizer for Sky Arrow Club, New York statewide. Adam, welcome to As The Pokéball Turns. How are you doing today?
Doing pretty good. I appreciate you having me on the show.
Absolutely, and I'm always a fan of having organizers who build up Pokemon communities. It's the backbone of why I started this podcast. And before we even talk about anything, let's start with that question. What is Sky Arrow New York City statewide for those who don't know?
Yeah, so Sky Arrow Club is a group that I created with a couple of friends back in 2025 when we were planning for a meetup at Long Island Retro Game Expo downstate. It's a group that I made to specifically focus on the retro Pokemon games. And one of the things about that is the fact that if you go to a store or, you just pick up one of the games just like on like a marketplace website, you'll realize that if you get a legitimate copy, they cost a lot of money and you're usually buying them alone. So you probably don't have a whole lot of people to play with if you're buying them like that. So I noticed this in like the various retro game stores where I'm from in Rochester, New York. And I decided that it was probably time to start to make like a meetup group where people can, once they buy the games, they can come and find us and we can, do things like trade, battle, do any of the mini games and any of the games that have that, any of the side activities like Funfest. In fact, Funfest in Black 2 and White 2 is actually what originally brought us together because before it was Sky Arrow Club, it was just a random meetup that we did in 2024 in Long Island Retro Game Expo for the Funfest missions in Black 2 and White 2. And we've been growing ever since we've hosted those.
I mean, it's amazing how you just saw a need because retro games, well, I guess like retro to us now, the old Pokemon games are very hard to find, as you said. And a lot of people may have a couple of the games while missing some of the more important ones. I
Right.
guess starting with that, like, what's been the experience in starting this club? Because you said you started with Black and White for FunFest. What's been the
Yeah, yeah.
experience about building on top of that?
Well, it's been challenging because there's a lot of different people that are looking for a lot of different things. Like, for example, there are some people that you get the people that still swear by the Game Boy games. They're the best ones. They never moved on to the Game Boy Advance. You get some people that they're really casual and they don't necessarily want to do battles because the competitive nature of things, it's a little daunting. It's very hard to train in the retro games. Well, that's actually one of the things that we try to assist with because in our events, we actually have rentals that we give to people. They're not really rentals in like the traditional sense. They're allowed to keep them. We kind of just call them rentals as if they're rentals like in Pokemon Stadium or Pokemon Stadium 2, but they're able to
Right.
keep them and they're battle ready Pokemon that they're able to use in battle events. And then you've got people that like, all they want to do is like they might just want to trade, they might just want to shiny hunt. So really balancing that is one of the really big challenges that we still are kind of working through, but at conventions, because we do local meetups and we do convention meetups. Usually at conventions, we're a little bit more on the competitive side. And 2 weekends ago, we actually hosted a Journey Across America Gen 3 tournament at Long Island Retro Game Expo.
Ooh.
Yeah, and that was very important because we actually had one of the previous winners of one of those come in to our tournament. And one of the things that was interesting about it too is the fact that this was also I think it was the 20th anniversary of that format to begin with. So we were very lucky to have hosted that. And once again, we provided the rentals for people that may not be the most like apt in like RNG manipulating or just outright just fully training their Pokemon. So that's what we kind of do to make sure that we bridge that gap while still providing a fun experience for people that, they might not be the most competitive, but they still want to battle. So
That's fair. I mean, you touch on so much history of Pokemon, but let's start with a fun question just to get your experience behind it. If I was just to hand you a Game Boy and told you you could spend the entire night playing one generation of Pokemon like we were kids again, which generation are you picking and why?
I think Gen 3. Gen 3 is probably my favorite generation. And it's just because Gen 3 has a lot of little niche things that happen. I mean, the thing is it depends too, because I look at these games not as like a single player experience, but a multiplayer experience. And Gen 3 does a really good job at that with the record mixing.
Mm-hmm.
Even things like the Battle Tower, you mix records with someone and their team shows up in the Battle Tower. But even without that being the case, like let's say like, like single player or like someone else, I would probably still say Gen 3 and I'd specifically say Emerald. I've probably sunk the most amount of hours in my game time specifically in Emerald. I actually did it was a couple of years ago. I did a 100% playthrough of Emerald, so I did the Battle Frontier
Oh,
without
wow.
RNG manipulation or injection. Yeah, that took me 3.5 years to clear. But that's probably what I would play and continue to play.
I mean, you mentioned Battle Frontier for Gen 3. What else sticks to your mind when it comes to playing Pokemon Emerald specifically? What do you remember
Oh,
about playing that?
well, I remember when I was a kid, I remember the legendary hunt, trying to go and figure out the Reggies. And then at the end of the game, you did Rayquaza, of course, before the Elite Four. But after that, when you're searching for Kyogre and Groudon, it's like, you go to a random route and all of a sudden you see the intense sun. You figure out, like, what the heck am I looking at here? In Gen 3, there was like the legendaries, they felt legendary. And that was such an awesome thing to have. I also think about all the secret events and all of that. Any of our events, we try to distribute these events so that people can actually experience them on cart. So I'm talking like the Deoxys event, the Ho Mugia event.
Mm-hmm.
Granted, I didn't get to experience those as a kid, but I knew they existed.
Right.
And that always, for me, there was like an extra layer of like mysticism to these. I mean, Mystic Ticket, Aurora Ticket, and one of those Pokemon that it's a mythical, so it's in the name. But I think the presentation of it all was so good. And, I even look at, Ruby and Sapphire. I mean, for me, Gen 3 was an era where Game Freak was absolutely trying to find unique things that they could put into the games. And I don't want to say anything bad about like the newer games too. I think that they serve a purpose too. But I mean, you look at things like the e-reader, you look at like the interconnectivity, especially with that record mixing. Pokemon Box RS, I'm actually a lucky owner of that game.
Wow, that's a rare one.
Yeah. Yep. So, being able to experience like the whole ecosystem. Coliseum and XD, I mean, I have to bring them up too. Yes. Coliseum and XD, I mean, I thought they were fantastic follow-ups to Stadium and Stadium 2 just in battle mode alone. But I mean, a lot of people I know really enjoyed the scenario. One person specifically really loves Coliseum. But this is all to say that, like that whole ecosystem in Gen 3, it just seems like everything they did for it, they wanted to make sure it succeeded, and they wanted to make sure that they were adding in things for everyone. Even contests, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
I think you bring up so much because on one hand, you're right. Gen 3 has so much untapped multiplayer functions that unless you actually had people who played or a lot of group of people who played Pokemon back in the day, well, let's be honest, a lot of people didn't because Pokemon kind of dived in popularity at that point. Yep. You really easily missed that part. Like you brought up the Battle Tower where you mix records. You brought up mixing records, which also brought up your secret bases where your friend's secret base from one game could be into another one. And we're not even talking about the berry hunting from Leaf Green and all the mini games they had in there. There's so much that was introduced into that game that I think a lot of us miss it because maybe I think Pokemon was still trying to figure itself out at the moment compared to now. It's more of a mature brand. But I think a lot of that exploration was both felt in the game as well as the people who made it.
It was experimental. It was experimental for sure. They wanted to see what stuck. And I mean, I think they found like, secret bases. Eventually they still made it into Gen 4, but it was like in a different sort of feel. And then like, of course, the Battle Frontier again, contests again. But going back to like what you're saying about a lot of people didn't experience that. This year was the first year of my life where I was able to find 4 people, due to Sky Arrow Club, due to the club I made, I was able to find 4 people that were able to make perfect Pokéblocks. And we made them. And now it's just contests are just pushovers now because we made these perfect Pokéblocks to max out and like we did it all legitimately. We grew the berries. We, actually like made sure we played the mini game efficiently. So that was rewarding. And I look back at that as just like a very like a small sort of like win for like the overall like purpose of my group,
I mean, when you think about that moment, just about getting perfect Pokeblocks, because for those who don't know, it's 4 players both hitting Pokeblocks. I think you have to hit the double circle, if I remember correctly, but all y'all have to do it at the same time. What was that feeling like for you to finally experience that without, having to use the NPCs?
Well, it felt like I had unlocked some sort of like console command that gave me God mode in contests. It's seriously like this happens, and it almost is like the moves you choose barely matter. Like, yes, they matter in like master rank, but it's unreal. And the thing is, we still have not yet, at least in Rochester, we haven't had a contest event. We've done things like the mini games so far. We've done our own battles. We actually did a Safari Week shiny hunting event. It was a general shiny hunt event, but the focus was mainly on like the Safari Zone. Stuff like that, essentially just being able to do that with people. But, going back to your original question though, it just felt like what I'm doing for the group is paying off. And this is all to say too, I tout myself as like the admin of it. I'm not the only person that like hosts events. I have a lot of helpful people downstate. I think like Mosquito VGC, Ricky, they've been helping out downstate while I've been trying to get things moving upstate. I think downstate, they have a lot more success because there's just generally a lot more people. Upstate, we do find people, but it's a lot more sparing, and we usually, our events are a little smaller, and our conventions upstate are a little bit smaller as well, which isn't bad because, I mean, 8 to 10 people is still a good amount of people to really like dig into these multiplayer features.
Now, you said doing conventions, so do y'all like host these conventions for people to come, or is it something y'all partner with? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, what we do is we normally partner with the conventions. Like, for example, coming up shortly, we're doing Retro Game Con in Syracuse, New York. And our current plan for that is I'm actually going to be volunteering for a majority of that convention. And basically what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be running a handheld lounge. And essentially what we're going to be doing is we're just going to play a whole bunch of handheld games. But there's specific events at certain times. And one of the events is going to be a Gen 4 tournament where we bring in 2 Nintendo Wiis with Pokemon Battle Revolution.
Ooh.
And we just play Gen 4. And it's kind of funny because last year, to go off on a little bit of a tangent, we learned something very pivotal about the Nintendo Wii. In 2025 or in 2026, if you bring a Nintendo Wii to a public area with a lot of wireless devices with like cell phones and all that, turns out that the connection doesn't really stay consistent and it gets a lot of interference. One of my friends who is like the tech guy of the group, Metchtival, he helps out with a lot of the tech stuff. And right now what he's trying to do is he's trying to mod an antenna into the Nintendo Wii by basically stripping it down to the bare board and putting basically hooking up an antenna and then putting it all back together so that there's a stronger antenna that's attached to the Nintendo Wii so we don't get as much interference. Because last year we tried to do this too when we were in the free play area and we just could not use our Pokemon Battle Revolution setup, so we had to do it all on cart, which fortunately we were able to do. But it was still very much so like, oh, we wanted the spectacle of Pokemon Battle Revolution, but we couldn't do it. So,
well, I was wondering because you mentioned how much you're into ultra games or retro games. What do you think is about the older games that has changed or maybe been lost compared to modern Pokemon games nowadays? Like, why go back to the past?
Yeah, a lot of it I think has to do with how they've moved things over to online play, and I think that there's nothing inherently wrong with that. This is like a prime example. If you go back to Gen 6 or Gen 7, you get locked out of a lot of content because those servers are offline now. Like you get locked out of friend safaris for people that you add online. You get locked out of any of the Festival Plaza stuff in Gen 7. You get locked out of like the main trading in that. You get locked out of all the Vivian patterns. I forget what the actual name of that. The butterfly Pokemon. Yeah. Vivillon, yeah. I don't know the pronunciation.
It's okay.
It's weird. I'm sure you probably get that from time to time where it's like you see the names, but it's like I've never actually said the name out loud, so I don't know how it's pronounced. But you miss out on that in Gen 6 specifically because you can't trade people globally. You miss out on a lot of the past tournaments and all that they used to do. So it's very finite. And the thing is these required online features. And if you look at Gen 8 and Gen 9, it's kind of more of the same. I mean, you do have local wireless for, like the camps and stuff in Gen 8, but this is all to say that I think that the older games, when they were developing these extra features, they were doing it in such a way where they were unique, right? Like it wasn't just like, because Festival Plaza is basically just Joint Avenue. It's just a little bit different.
Right.
And then the Friend Safari, like, yeah, the extra shinies are cool, but like, it's not anything that's like super unique. It's not even really a safari when like, in terms of like the definition of like how that was before. So for me, like the allure is definitely just, I'm not even going to say like, the 3DS gens are bad. In fact, I love the 3DS gens. But as the time went on, especially in the Switch generation, I think a lot of the experimental, like, oh, we need to try to move this forward in some way, I think it kind of got lost. There were some things, especially in Gen 8, that were interesting. Like you could host your own battle competitions, like locally. Mm-hmm. This is something that I've never heard about like someone doing. The only reason I was able to do it was because I was also an admin for my I was an admin for my college's Pokemon club. So that club, the RIT Pokemon Club, we would do a beginning of the year event. And actually, it's around the time where they're going to do that. I think it's going to be in 2 weeks again. And we hosted a 30-person, I think it was 30 people. It was either like 28, 32, something around there. That many people, we hosted a tournament to determine who the 8 gym leaders were for that year.
Oh, that's
awesome.
We
do this they do that every year. Like they do it every year. And basically it's a modified format where it's basically you have to choose 5 of the same type and then you get a wild card. And the reason I bring this up is because we hosted this with a Gen 8 like live competition, like local competition in person system that was built into the game because Gen 8 really seemed to be like the competitive push for Pokemon in some ways, like where they really wanted to push it and like try to, make it mainstream. Mm-hmm. Then COVID happened, so you couldn't really do that a whole heck of a lot in person. So I think that's really why I haven't heard anyone else ever use that feature, but there are still features in the new games that exist. Like I think about right now, they're still doing raids, like the 7-star raids in Scarlet and Violet. But to me, they're not an experience in of themselves. It's just something that it felt like they kind of just threw in. Whereas doing like secret base stuff where it's like, oh, I'm going to make a secret base. I'm going to have a themed team so that someone can, they can find my team and have a good time battling them. I think that's really cool. Or like another feature, for example, I love this feature, the Pokéwalkers, right?
Yes.
In Heart Gold and Soul Silver.
Mm-hmm.
I always bring my Pokéwalker to any convention I ever go to, and I always make sure I have a fun, themed team for people to battle. And that's because, it's one thing if it's just like, oh, this is just a team where it's just a Sandstorm team, lead with Tyranitar, then Heatran comes out, Garchomp comes out, and then like I have to worry about everything in the back, but it's a Sandstorm team, so it's super hard to go against. No, I think my latest team that I made for Long Island Retro Game Expo, it's mainly it was a Coliseum themed team. And it was mainly not fully evolved Pokemon because it's just like, well, that's cool just to have a themed team. And I did like a Team Snag'em cosplay with 2 of my friends.
Oh,
so,
nice.
Yeah. So, I look back at that and I look back at like all the teams that, when I connected my Pokewalker to other people and I got their teams, I look back at that and I'm like, yeah, that was a really fun weekend. And, I'm able to still kind of remember people just by battling them in the trainer house in Viridian City. Mm-hmm. So that stuff, it felt like it was more like thought out. Like it was more unique because otherwise, like you wouldn't really be able to battle anyone otherwise, or like you wouldn't be able to see like a team like that. So, and with competitive play, I also don't want to like talk bad about competitive play because I also do appreciate competitive play, but I mean, there's a lot of centralizing things depending on what meta you're playing. So you don't really get to see that where it's just like a cool creative themes team.
It kind of reminded me of back with Black and White 2, I think specifically, where we had the Union Tunnel or whatever it's called, where if you had your DS connected with you and you walked by somebody, you get a character that you can potentially recruit. And I always enjoyed that where, like, it made Pokemon feel more alive because you didn't know who it was sometimes because it was always a secret. But it was kind of cool to know that there are people who liked Pokemon out there, right? To where I could build my own little tunnel out of people and kind of invite them in. I always look for specific ones. But that's just the fun part about Pokemon. Then you mentioned the Pokéwalker to where it's on the go to where you can battle. I don't remember much of the Pokéwalker anymore. It's been years for me. But I just remember it being a lot of fun to where it felt like, oh, I can carry my Pokemon with you in a way.
Yep, exactly. That's exactly, when I was a kid, that's exactly how I felt. I felt like, legitimately the first time I had it on me, I was pretending that Totodile was behind me. I was probably a little bit too old to be doing that. I'm not going to lie because it came out, 2010? So I might have been like 12 or 13, but all to say that it definitely felt like it felt like I think a lot of people felt that way when Pokemon Go came out. That's the best way I kind of like referred to because I didn't really play Pokemon Go when it came out. I was busy playing other games, mainly Counter-Strike, but other games. So really, it was kind of like the predecessor to Pokemon Go in a lot of ways. It's like, I just have this like basically like really minimalized experience of Pokemon like on me when I'm walking around. So I liked that. And once again, I mean, the connectivity of it was stellar. You connect to someone else with Pokewalker, transfer teams, and like you get just like one of the rarest items on like whatever Pokewalker route you're on. So awesome feature. Then they don't do that anymore. Like they could do that in like a phone app. They could have done the 3DS because the 3DS is a step counter. They don't necessarily even need to like retread the same area. Like they can build it into the game and make it like a little bit more. But I think the only thing that they did with the step counter, and this is exactly the point I'm getting at though. The only thing they did with the step counter in the 3DS games is in specifically Gen 6, you can speed up the O powers that you could get just by walking. That was really it. Like that was... It just felt like there wasn't any Street Pass stuff for X and Y. They built it into Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire by doing like the record mixing stuff, and that's great. But then Gen 7, they went a little bit too overboard with how powerful the game is. I don't know if you know this, but in Gen 7 specifically for the DS, I don't think this happens on the new 3DS, but I know this happens on the original. They actually have to power off the main 3DS operating system just to make sure that Sun, Moon, Ultra Sun, and Ultra Moon can run. Wow. Meaning that you can't really Street Pass if you're in game like that because there's no underlying operating system supporting the Street Pass connections. So that's why there's actually no Street Pass tags in Sun and Moon. They mention it in the game, but it's only if you're in game. What ends up happening is they run their own version of Street Pass. It's like Gen 5, where like you have the DS on you, and if it's like on Sun and Moon, it still connects to other people that have Sun and Moon on them. But that's a lot more rare than just having a 3DS in the general sense. So, but that's also kind of what I mean by like, they have this feature or like even like play coins on the 3DS, and they don't touch it.
Now, you talk so much about different generations of Pokemon. Clearly, you've been invested with Pokemon for a long time. What brings you to Pokemon? What makes you come back to this franchise?
Well, I will say, let me tell you what originally brought me back. It was about 2013, 2014. I just started playing pretty much what I would consider to be my favorite game of all time. Because if you can believe it, Pokemon actually isn't necessarily, it's up there, but it's not my favorite game of all time. My favorite game of all time is Counter-Strike.
Mm-hmm.
And I started playing it like competitively in 2013. I played Counter-Strike Source beforehand,
Mm-hmm.
but like 2012, 2013 is when Counter-Strike Global Offensive came out. I went really hard into that. Like I was in high school. I thought I was going to be a professional. And there's a lot of reasons. Like I see there's a lot of overlap into why I got so much into Counter-Strike and then why I came back to Pokemon. Because for me, what brought me back into Pokemon was the same thing that I originally went into Counter-Strike for. It was the fact that in terms of competitive play, there was a lot I was learning, but in terms of just like going around and meeting people, I really enjoyed doing that. And these games, after high school, I kind of went around a little bit. I was kind of focusing on that. I didn't go to college right away, but when I did go to college, they had a Pokemon club. So I was like, oh, I'm definitely going to check this out. And then when I checked that out, I'm like, oh, I'm getting really into Pokemon now again. And I would say that like the shift really happened during the pandemic where I started to really dig into. I was playing, and that was the point where I was playing Emerald, but I was really playing it a lot more as the pandemic went on because, you know, when you're stuck inside, there's not really a whole heck of a lot to do. And Counter-Strike, the thing about Counter-Strike was when I was at college, it was distracting me from my grades. Like that's how good for me. That's how good of a game Counter-Strike is. If it's a game that starts to distract me from everything real in life that I need to do, and it's so good I can't play it. That's how I know. Like, oh, it was my like favorite game. But this is all to say that once the pandemic kind of ended and we started meeting in person again, I realized that I was really going to miss this community that during my college years I'd hung out in on Discord during the pandemic, and when we came back and we started to do in-person tournaments and all that, I was really going to miss it. So that's why I started my own thing. And I think with my own thing with Sky Arrow Club, one of the big things is I carry with me a lot of the same things that I enjoyed at the RIT Pokemon Club, as well as things that I enjoyed when I was a Counter-Strike player and I would travel to go to tournaments and all that. You know, seeing the same faces in different cities, going to different tournaments and seeing how different teams play and all that in Counter-Strike, that to me carried me into doing this and is really what excites me. The fact that meeting other people that are really passionate about these games in different ways too. I mean, I've met someone who's really into shiny hunting. I've met someone who isn't necessarily the most into battles, but like she definitely is like interested in it and a welcoming environment. And like I've met people that they have really just kind of been more on like the casual side of things, but they've wanted to try out some of these events or even just like to hang out too, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So that's really what brought me back. It's just the fact that playing the Pokemon games, and this is what Pokemon Go did. I like to I didn't really play Pokemon Go a whole heck of a lot. When it came out, I didn't even have a phone. But this is all to say that, you know, when that came out, the one thing that it did really well that I don't see anyone ever really talking about is the fact that I think Pokemon is intrinsically a social game due to its DNA. I mean, even back in Gen 1, even like pre-Gen 1, when we were developing it, the developers, wasn't it something where it was like one of the developers said like, oh, like we came up with this because we were playing Dragon Quest and someone got 2 rare items and they were like, oh, that'd be cool if I could trade this to you. Mm-hmm. When Pokemon became a thing and the importance of it was, you know, trading amongst each other and battling, they intrinsically laid the foundation to have this DNA, which was interconnectivity with other people. So that's essentially how I view it. I view it as a very social game where there's a lot of self-expression in like team building or just like what you do in it. And there's a lot of skill expression in the battling. I tend to gravitate to games that typically have like high skill expression. That's always like been interesting for me as well. And that's really what keeps on bringing me back and keeps on making sure that this group that I'm running now, and once again, with the help of other people, I can't like understate how much like that downstate help is for the group. But this group that I'm an admin of, it's just, that's why I keep coming back. That's why I make sure that this group is healthy, you know?
Do you remember what it was like to run the first ever group for your area? Like, what was the emotions like for that?
So in my area, we actually started while the group has existed since last year. In fact, we're coming up on the 1-year anniversary. I had just got enough people to really start doing things around like, I want to say March. What we did was we actually just did the Gen 3 minigames for our first event. Once again, it wasn't that I was nervous. It was just more so like, because one of the things with the Gen 3 games is you still have to have things prepared. It was that, and it was making sure that the hardware works well. A lot of this hardware, since it's older, we had to use so we did the Gen 3 mini games, which are only on like the wireless adapters. Doing those, it was really funny because there's still pictures of us like all hunched over, like really close together across like this giant table, because the connection was just so loose that it was very hard to, not loose, but it was
Very
so
narrow, I think,
weak.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, weak. Yeah, it was so weak. And we had 5 people playing, or like 4 people playing, depending on the minigame. But we had like the max number of people playing. It was just very hard to make sure like the connection stayed in place. I mean, we all had a good time, and I got to meet people that I had met before that I had just talked to online. So that was great too. Actually, I guess our first local event technically was like a convention event because we actually did do Toricon. But it's the same sort of thing where it's like going in, I've hosted other events before, and my experience with the RIT Pokemon Club and hosting events with them made it so that the skills transferred almost like extremely well. Like there was no hiccups really. So I'm not really nervous in the least bit in terms of just like the hosting skills and all that.
Mm-hmm.
It's more so nervous about the hardware, making sure it cooperates because it's a little bit on the old side now.
Just a little bit, maybe 20 years, give or take.
Yep. I think the most nervous I was, and this is a true story because this is a really cool event. In Rochester, every year we have something called the Lilac Festival. That's when there's this park. Well, actually, it's really like when lilacs kind of bloom, but there's this one particular park where there's a whole lot of lilacs. It's like the city's flower, and they all bloom, and basically they made a festival around that. And it was my dream for years. I'm talking about even before the pandemic. It was my dream for years to do a Gen 6 tournament at this festival where it's certain type of Pokemon only.
Oh.
And this year was the first year where I had enough people to where I could actually do that. But one of the things was because it was a public event, I was very nervous about like, oh, are people going to be able to find where we are? Are people going to have teams ready? Or are they going to know the meta? Is it going to rain? Because this is outside. So it's like, are we going to get rained out? I'm going to have to reschedule.
Right.
That's the most nervous I've ever been for an event, coupled with the fact that I've always wanted to do something like that. The actual meta was awesome. It was no legendaries, but it was grass types, fairy types, and bug types only.
Ooh.
Yeah, it was so fun. It's something that I think we all agreed, like, we're probably going to do this every year, like the same exact format, the same exact generation. We're going to do it every year. It was just a good time. And like I said, like it was like literally one of my dream events. And we had enough people to where it was more of like a free play event. We didn't really do a tournament. It was just more so like whoever wants to battle can battle. And other than that, like just a general like Street Pass Gen 6 meetup. We had a really good time. And unfortunately, the only failing was I had to cut it short because that was also the weekend that the NASCAR race was happening in Watkins Glen. So I actually had to drive closer to the Finger Lakes that weekend just to get down to the racetrack. But all to say that we had a good like 3 or 4 hours where we just kind of battled. It was a good time.
You mentioned how this was just a dream event for you. Like this is something you envisioned. Did it feel surreal to actually have it happen during the moment when y'all were battling, like to actually see it come to place?
It absolutely was. I didn't think that I had to be the person to go and like really go and plan this stuff. I just kind of thought down the line I'd find other people that would just like intrinsically they would just be interested in the games. So for me, really, it was a sign that what I've been doing, because one of the things I haven't mentioned is I've been putting a lot of just like general resources, mostly monetary, because what I do is I try to get the help of other people in my life. Like we have these flyers, right?
Mm-hmm.
And one of my best friend's girlfriends actually designed the flyers. She was like a graphic design major. She actually just graduated. But all to say that she did like a phenomenal job. She's looking for like a career now. She asked me if she could use me as a reference. I'm like, absolutely. Because the flyers that she made, pretty much in every retro game store in Rochester or around the area, these flyers are hung up because I've talked to the owners and like I've been a pretty good patron of a lot of these stores. So they were like, oh yeah, no problem. You can put up a flyer. So there's been a lot of resources and time that I've put in, like putting up these flyers and like, spending the money to like get this stuff made, getting these flyers printed. Of course, like there's like the managerial, like monitoring our Discord and like making sure that it's set up in such a way that's conductive to, doing meetups and making sure everyone's safe. There's been a lot of things that I've put in, and this is all to say at the end of the day, having that event made me realize that what I am doing, I'm going in the right direction. I'm the person for this.
It was like confirmation for you.
Yes, exactly. It's like enjoying the fruits of your labor.
I mean, you mentioned how it's not just you doing this, that you have people behind you who do different roles, whether it be the Discord, the person creating the flyers. How important is it for you to have those people behind your back doing that hard work to kind of make sure your event succeeds?
I think it's everything, to be honest with you. For me, a lot of times it doesn't necessarily feel like I should be the one that's necessarily in the lead here. I've thought about it multiple times because once again, there's a lot of just moderation. There's a lot of administering and like a lot of like layout things I have to do for the Discord that I have to like really focus on and really make sure that it gets done. And, it's hard because I have a desk job too. So it's like, I get out of my desk job and then I'm immediately thinking about like development things or things where I need to improve for the group. Or like if I'm like planning like a meetup that's happening, like I have to plan that as well, make sure everything's all set for that. I have to kind of come up with the formats that we're going to be doing, the general activities. And even like for a while, I think it was like location was really difficult. I want these events to be free. So it's like, do I spend my own money if I'm like renting out an area? And normally I do. Or is it something where it's like, can I like meet someone like at a festival or at a park and do that? But all the other people that have helped me out, whether it be I call them the regional representatives. Those are just people that are spread across the state. So like some people like I said, like Mosquito VGC, Ricky downstate, Lemu Grub, who is going to be looking more towards Buffalo. She helps me out with a lot of stuff too. Once again, that's everything. And in some aspects, it feels like, I don't know, like it feels like to me, maybe I shouldn't be the guy for this because it seems like sometimes I am kind of taking a backseat, especially to like the downstate stuff. But I know that without my support, the people downstate wouldn't necessarily be able to run everything they're looking to run and make sure that it's in like an organized manner. So there's a give and take, and I'm very grateful for everyone who's helped out with this. And like my tech guy, my friend Zach, and I'm glad that he puts the time into, some of the projects that I might not have the time for.
I mean, you've talked so much about your experience, but one thing we got to know is, what's your favorite Pokemon?
Wooper.
Really? Why Wooper?
My favorite Pokemon is Wooper. Because he's just a little guy. I don't know. Axolotls are generally just pretty cute, and I remember specifically I like Wooper because in Pokemon X, I was playing through a game, and I used to not like the Kalos games at all. Like I hated X and Y, but roughly around the time I went to college, I was like, oh yeah, I'll try X and Y again. I'll try X. I'll see if I like it. And one of the things I did was I was in that route, that swamp route that I think is like directly north of Lumios. I can't remember if I think it's north. I just found a Wooper and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to use this Wooper on my team. And I decided I wasn't going to evolve it. I was just going to give it an Everstone and see what it can do. And yeah, it needed some support, but I mean, I went through the end of the game with it. And after that, I decided to start collecting ribbons with it. I think right now I have like 29 ribbons on it.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, it missed out on a lot because, it's not like it can go back into like Gen 3 or 4. And I also think I missed out on some of the ribbons in BDSP by virtue of like, it was already level 100 by the time BDSP came out, so I can't do like the footstep ribbon or whatever. Mm-hmm. Slowly but surely, Wooper became my favorite Pokemon. Because before that, it was kind of just like, I don't really have a favorite. I kind of just like the ice type. But now it's just like, nah, Wooper. Like, without second question, Wooper.
But
or second guess.
It sounds like the ice type's your favorite type, though. But Wooper's
yes,
your
it
favorite
is.
Pokemon.
Yep. So I like the ice type a lot because for me, it reminds me of upstate winters that are brutal, where we get multiple feet of snow. And I was an ice type gym leader for the RIT Pokemon Club because I'd placed high enough in those tournaments to where 3 out of the 4 years I participated in that, I was a gym leader.
Well, we're coming towards the end of the interview. I want to finish on this last question because I think it's an important one, especially for what you do. If Sky Arrow isn't remembered for the battles, the trades, the in-game events, what do you hope people remember about how it felt to be there?
I'm hoping that there's 2 things that I'm hoping that, actually 3 things. A couple of years from now, I hope we still exist. I hope I'm doing this as long as I possibly can. And if not, if I have to step down or if it's something where, I just can't run it anymore, I'm hoping someone else picks it up. So that kind of like leads into like the first actual out of the 2, the first actual thing that I want people to be reminded of and like kind of like the legacy of it. This group in of itself, I don't think would exist if I didn't have a long time ago, more than a decade ago, there was a group for Counter-Strike that I didn't manage. I just attended. It was called Rochester LAN. That particular group was for Counter-Strike, and it was a good community, and we all just come together once a month and just play Counter-Strike. And yeah, it was competitive in some aspects, but at the same time, it would still be chill. Like after the games, we would go out from like the LAN center, and we'd kind of just chill right outside the doors. And then like when the next game was ready to go, we'd come back in and all that. And we'd go and like get meals together and just kind of like talk about like the pro scene and all that, the current happenings, the news, the updates, the patch notes. So this is all to say that I think that a lot of that life has kind of been repurposed into Sky Arrow Club. And in that same vein, in the same way that I look back at those 2013, 2014 times where I went to this LAN center and just played Counter-Strike with a whole bunch of people, I'm hoping that a lot of people still keep that fondness when they look back at it and say, this was really cool. The fact that this particular person was able to amass a good amount of people to actually like experience these multiplayer things again. And then I don't know, like maybe that takes the form of something else. Maybe that someone's like, oh, well, I really enjoy, I don't know, off the top of my head, like I really enjoy Quake. So then like they go and like they do like their own like Quake live meetup group where they just go and just play, like go to a LAN center and play Quake. Pokemon's a little bit easier since it's all on handhelds for the most part, but all to say that I really hope that it inspires people to kind of just see what's out there. I mean, for even like the listeners right now, I mean, even for Pokemon, one of the reasons that I like to do these podcasts is I just kind of like to get the word out, like, see what's out there, go on like your town subreddit or something, or like go on like a Facebook group for like Pokemon in your town, to see if other people are playing these retro games and like meet up and enjoy them again, because they're so much better with other people. That's one of the things though that if people look back at this and just see all the work that, the regional reps put in and that, me and other people put in to make sure that these events are unique, they're lively. I really hope they look back in that. And I hope that they look back at that with such a fondness that they try to recreate it.
I like that. You want to be the inspiration for others down the road.
Yeah, exactly. That would be my legacy for this group. Like it somehow went away for whatever reason. I would want people to kind of pick up where I left off,
Well, thank you for listening to As the Pokeball Turns, where every trainer has a story. If this episode don't resonate with you, share the episode with a fellow trainer and follow the podcast for more voices, more journeys, and more memories. I'm David Hernandez, and remember, your next Pokemon adventure begins here.